So it's not a legal schooling. I know you're sensitive to people schooling you on the law, but I think I can trump you when it comes to the history of Grenada.
What you're saying is that this resignation was expected? Would it be fair to say that you abdicated your responsibility by not showing up in Parliament on Friday?
We are not aware of the terms of the agreement.
But then how can you say the terms are not favorable? You don't know the terms.
We love old talk, we love gossip, we love brango, we love all them kind of things in the Caribbean.
If I cannot play music, I don't know how I'm going to live.
We are borrowing money to pay debt because of corruption, waste, and mismanagement.
That they have difficulty with your leadership. Why then are you contesting the presidency?
Since losing that seat, what have you been up to?
Now, Mr. Attorney General, this particular provision sounds unconstitutional, but why were there not consultations before moving forward with the proposals? Did they say what will happen when you guys get to St. Vincent? Because there are pressing socio-economic issues that I would want to address with you.
In the hyper-information age of social media, the Bubb Report knows there is more to the story. We have questions and demand answers. We strive to hold the powerful accountable and tell an unbiased, contextual story. You know what happened. We let you know why it happened. There is always more to the story. The Bubb Report, streaming every Sunday at 11 a.m. on Facebook and YouTube.
Torchlight Independent Media presents Grenada's only source for independent, unbiased, and well-researched broadcast journalism. This is the Bubb Report with Dr. Kellon Bubb.
Hello and welcome to the February 6th edition of the Bubb Report. Last Monday, Caretaker native and Grenada's Works Minister, Senator Nolan Cox, was elected as the Caretaker candidate for the constituency of South St. George. Both the tourist belt of Grenada, the home to many North American and European expats, and a major population center for many Grenadians who relocated to this area for better economic opportunities in the burgeoning tourism sector, as well as employment opportunities at Grenada's second largest employer, the St. George's University. Nolan Cox replaces the combative and hubristic Minister of Health, Nicholas Steele, who has become a polarizing figure in Grenada due to his very public role as the face of the battle against the COVID-19 pandemic, which ravaged Grenada in the latter part of 2021. Steele contested and won the South St. George seat in 2018 by roundly defeating the NDC candidate Philip Raymond Roberts by 15 percentage points in a final tally of 3,536 votes to Roberts's 2,678 votes. Senator Cox is a government minister and legislator, and prior to his foray into frontline politics, worked as a government bureaucrat in the Ministry of Agriculture as an extension officer responsible for crop and livestock production. He also served as an administrator for Caretaker's Princess Royal Hospital. As of December 31st, 2021, there are 10,483 eligible voters in the South St. George constituency, according to data from the Parliamentary Elections Office. The implication is that this constituency now contains the largest population of eligible voters in any of the 15 constituencies in the country. The constituency with the second largest voting bloc in Grenada is the constituency of St. David, with 9,326 eligible electors. In the past, the constituency of South St. George was represented by female parliamentarians Alexandria Otway-Noel of the NNP in 2013, Glenys Roberts, formerly of the NDC in 2003, and 2008 respectively, NNP's Mark Isaac in 1995 and 1999, Finsley St. Louis from 1984 to 1990 on a separate NNP and NDC ticket, and Sir Eric Gairy in 1972 and 1976. The 1976 elections in Grenada was marred with allegations of vote rigging by Sir Eric's GULP. This week on the report, we sit down with NNP's newly minted Caretaker candidate for the South St. George constituency and take a deep dive into the issues affecting Grenada's most densely populated constituency. Also on the program, we trace Grenada's constitutional journey to independence from the outset of associated statehood in March of 1967. The decision to grant Grenada full internal self-governance was the catalyst for Sir Eric Gairy to move forward with full political independence. However, his desire for political independence was met with angst by certain segments of the national community due to fear of his dictatorial style of leadership, manifested in high-handed actions such as weaponizing a steel pan band in 1957 to disrupt a meeting that was being held by the Grenada National Party. Gairy's behavior in the political arena, coupled with accusations of public corruption, laid bare in the 1961 report of the Commission of Inquiry into the Control of Public Expenditure, led by Jamaican Administrator J.M. Lloyd. This inquiry led to Gairy's first ouster from public office by the British and the subsequent suspension of the colony's constitution. According to former Deputy Prime Minister Bernard Coad in his book Sky Red, A Tale of Two Revolutions, Gairy's disdain for the British and his desire to meet the legal requirements for independence by way of a supermajority in the Grenada Parliament paved the way for the island to be granted independence by Great Britain in 1974. We welcome our guests, former member of the New Jewel Movement, Ewart Lane, Senator Nolan Cox of the New National Party, constitutional attorney Richie Maitland, and political leader of the Grenada United Labour Party, Jeffrey Prudhomme. We thank you for joining us. Hello everyone. We here at the Bubb Report wishes the people of Grenada, Carriacou and Petite Martinique a happy 40th anniversary of political independence. This week's editorial is a reproduction of a Time magazine editorial on Grenada's independence that was published on the 18th of February 1974. It reads as follows, quote, "As it celebrated its independence last week, after 324 years of first French and then British rule, tiny Grenada and its two sister islands were racked by disorder and threatened by civil war. Telephone and electronic service have been out since the beginning of the year, and a general strike has crippled the country's economy. Bananas, one of Grenada's main exports, lie rotting in the fields, and nutmeg and cocoa, the two other principal crops, are piled up in warehouses with no one to load them onto ships. Britain prudently cancelled the scheduled visit of Prince Richard of Gloucester, a representative of the Queen, to the independence ceremonies, and alerted a warship to stand by to evacuate foreigners in case of violence. The United States State Department advised Americans to look for another tourist paradise. Tourism, which used to bring in 130,000 visitors each year, has totally evaporated on the island. The trouble began last November when anti-government demonstrators protesting the one-man rule of Prime Minister Eric Gairy, 51, and an unemployment rate of 50% or more, began marching through the streets of St. George's, the island's capital. Gary's police, a roughneck band derisively called the Mongoose by opponents, retaliated by beating up opposition leaders. Their attacks culminated last month in Bloody Monday, when the Prime Minister's bully boys broke up a protest rally and killed the father of one of Gary's chief critics. Since then, they have been looting shops owned by those who oppose the Prime Minister. In fear, most businessmen have shuttered up their stores. All but 2 of the island's 25 hotels have closed, and hundreds of Grenadians have fled to other countries to escape the ruthless secret police. Many islanders worried that once Britain let go altogether, Gary would set up a miniature dictatorship with himself as a pocket Napoleon. There could be massive bloodshed in a few days, warned Maurice Bishop, one of the opposition leaders beaten in the first attacks last year. The population is not prepared to be ruled by any madman, and it is very clear the jackal, as the population now calls him, is simply not prepared to resign. I think he is certifiably mad. The words of the late Prime Minister Maurice Bishop. Gary contemptuously dismissed his opponents as hot and sweaty, impetuous, and overambitious youngsters fresh from universities who preach bloodshed and are tainted by a bit of communism. In fact, he maintains his opposition is based on what he calls the plantocracy, the big plantation owners who have never forgotten that he was the one who got wage increases for their field hands in the 1950s. The landowners cannot forgive him, he insists, for never having gone to secondary school. And that ends the editorial for the week, a guest editorial by the Time magazine, which covered Grenada's independence back in 1974. A pleasant good morning again, and a happy independence to all Grenadians, both in Grenada and in particular here in the diaspora, as we are unable to partake in a lot of the oil down that they're currently indulging in on the island during this weekend. And at this time, I wish to welcome my first guest for this morning on the Bubb Report. He is the Minister of Works, a Caretaker native. That is Senator Nolan Cox. Senator Cox, welcome to the Bubb Report.
Good morning, Dr. Bob, and it's a pleasure to be here this morning. And also a pleasant morning to your other guests who might be listening and your viewers home here in Grenada, Caretaker, of course, as well, and in the diaspora. And let me take this opportunity to wish you happy independence as well. It's a wonderful day in Grenada right now, and so it's a time for us to reflect on the past 48 years. And so a lot of persons are out celebrating, and we are grateful to be here after 48 years.
Absolutely. And cheers to another 48. Now, Senator Cox, what we want to do is to disaggregate this conversation into 4 themes. We want to begin by building a personality profile of Senator Nolan Cox. Then we want to talk about the state of the South St. George constituency with respect to housing and health services for working people. We want to talk about infrastructure development. I'm sure that's something you're passionate about, given your current cabinet role, and the state of partisan politics in Grenada. Now, the first question, Senator Cox, is you've worked most of your life in public service before getting into frontline politics. What is it about frontline politics that attracted you?
Well, in every aspect, there is one common element, one common factor, and that is people. There are different structures. We can look at it from the public sector standpoint, from the political standpoint, but everything surrounds people, and that has been the common core issue that has driven me to be in the political forefront.
All right. Now, talk to us about putting your hat into the ring to be the presumptive candidate, the NNP's presumptive candidate for the next election. Now, you're originally from Caretaker. Not that that should preclude you, from running anywhere. But why an interest in the South St. George constituency?
Well, I think it started in terms of myself and the current parliamentary rep. We are very close colleagues, and we were having this conversation, and he had intimated that, look, he may not be contending against the seat, and asked me, if I would love to take up the mantle. So we had that conversation more than a year ago, and I gave it some deliberation. I had a conversation with my family, of course, and we live in the vicinity of the South, and I have a lot of friends there. There are hundreds of Caracoans in the South as well. So I thought that I have family living in the South, for that matter as well. So in that respect, I said, look, yes, I will give it a go, and it's something that I love doing, and an opportunity presents itself, and here we are today.
Now, you said that you have a close relationship with the current Member of Parliament for the South St. George. Of course, some chide his bedside manner with respect to his public utterances around COVID-19. But how would your representation be different from that of your predecessor, the Minister of Health?
In fairness to my colleague, we were dealt a very tough situation, and we all were placed in the middle of a crisis, something new, something novel, and he was a core principal person who had to drive that. And I think he did a commendable job. At times, yes, persons, we do make mistakes, but all in all, I think he did a commendable job. And in that respect, I think I really thank him as an individual, not so much as a parliamentarian or member of the cabinet, but thank him as a citizen for his contribution and support in that regard, in working with us in terms of us getting beyond this. I myself was a member of the COVID committee, so I do have an integral knowledge of what transpired in the background and to some of the challenges that we have and why we were able to be successful to where we are today. In terms of me, I have always been serving people, persons who know me, who have worked with me, persons who have served, can attest. That is who I am. That is how I've been. It is not really a job for me, but that is what I do. And I look forward to engaging constituents, which I've already been doing, those in the business community, those in the rural areas. And it's quite exciting to be given an opportunity to serve people in this capacity, and that is how I've seen it, and that is how I'm going to embrace it. It's an opportunity for a number of possibilities. Yes, there are challenges that are local to the constituencies, separate and apart from a national standpoint.
Yeah.
But those can be addressed with proper dialogue and putting measures in place and having somebody to champion the cause, and that is where I come in. I believe that I am the best person right now to champion the cause and the concerns of the persons in South St. George constituency. I think I can do that successfully.
Okay, now who is Senator Cox? Who is Nolan Cox? So we know a lot about your public service to Grenada, but what else should the people of the constituency that you're vying to represent know about you on a more deeply personal level?
Well, you're touching me there because one of the things that I've always been a kind of close person. That is how I've grown up. I am the first of 4 boys to my mom, who is a single parent. She's still alive. She resides in Caretaker, and she has always been there for me, guiding me in every step. So whatever I do, she's a central core in terms of advising me in doing this, and she is strong behind me in running in South St. George, and she has given me her full support and blessings. I think that is critical. I've been married for about 13 years now to my wife, Deanne. We've been together for about 25 years. We have 4 beautiful kids, 2 girls, 2 boys. I've spent a lot of time in Carriacou, doing a lot of work, a lot of projects, significant projects for Carriacou. I mean, a lot of people wouldn't know because I'm not the one to divulge what I do. I love sailing. I'm crazy about sailing. It's something that I try to do a lot. I haven't done in quite some time. I love young people. I love being able to inspire them in whatever I do, just my actions on a daily basis. I believe and I always pray that whatever I do, inspire young people to find their way, to find themselves, and to make something of themselves and make something of this country. I think if you can give persons that, that is invaluable, and that is what I do on a daily basis. And so this is who I am on a small scale. I have a lot of friends. I'm an avid cricketer. I love cricket. I'm longing to play a game of cricket. Honestly, I really long it. But the role of the ministry and now the constituency has somewhat not allowed me to partake in that as much as I would like to. But nonetheless, it is something that I'm doing is quite noble, and I'm very humbled for the opportunity to serve people of the South St. George constituency. I'm really excited about this. I think that we can do wonderful things. There are significant opportunities. There are life-changing opportunities that we can get done. And I'm a doer. I'm a result-oriented person. That is what I do. I love results. Some things must make sense. I don't like to skulk around. And again, one of the things about me is that if I say that I'm going to do something for you, I will do it. I'm a kind of stickler for my word. If I can't do something, I will say I can't do it. I don't traffic in what people may say bamboozling. I don't traffic in that at all. I think it's unproductive. I think it doesn't help neither myself nor whoever I serve. I think so. So it's easy for me, and so I can have a peaceful night rest. So I can wake up fresh and so.
So that you have a clear conscience. No
Correct.
bamboozling from
No.
Senator Cox. All right. Let's see what the population thinks about that. Now, Senator Cox, the South St. George constituency is one of the more economically prosperous constituencies in Grenada. Now, the issue of poverty in the area is one that has been identified in the latest World Bank report on living conditions in the country. The report points to the state of housing in communities as Montour and Grandans Valley as a result of mass rural to urban migration in the area. What are your plans to ensure that the South constituency has access to affordable, good quality housing?
I'm happy that you raised this because it is one of the most topical issue, and because of the opportunities that the South possess for jobs, persons come in, and in some cases they do squat and they find themselves in a difficult situation. Where we are with COVID again has not helped. It has really added some negative, what you can say, fuel to the whole issue of housing, and it is the most issue that has reached my office for the past 6 months or more. And what we have been looking at, we have been having some discussions with a number of persons. We have raised the concerns at the cabinet level in terms of more investment that need to be made into housing, making the program more adaptable to some of the challenges on the ground. So it's not an issue of being able to access the support. It's more an issue of how much can government do in any given fiscal period because of the demand. And not just only the South, a number of other communities also do have that challenge. And so we are working. We have significantly helped a number of persons within the past few months with me being there. So I have a close eye on what is taking place. What we have done also is to add support by having what we call crews who will actually implement the work. So what we have found out in cases where persons would have requested support, after receiving the material support, they are unable to implement the work themselves because they don't have the capacity to do so. So the program has somewhat expanded to provide that support through housing brigades who will come and not just deliver the material, but ensure that the materials go up and the person's homes are improved. It's a continuous process, but it is one of the most challenging issue for persons, especially in those two areas.
Now, the Montrouge area has been plagued with some serious drainage issues. Of course, you're the Minister of Works and Infrastructure for many years that causes significant flooding in the area. What are your plans to mitigate the negative impacts of that particular issue?
I'm very happy that you raised this. Coincidentally, we have been working on this for quite some time, and I'm happy to inform the public that we have just signed a contract for consultancy to commence, I believe, within the next week or two. The contract is already signed. I believe the consultants, the last communication I'm saw that they have sent the particulars for entry requirements to come in to do the consultancy work. That consultancy work will involve the Grenada area, the Montrouge area, and looking at the cause of flooding and to give recommendations to remedy it. And also it will look at the port, the tongue area, also the Tantin area. We have flooding there. Also, the tongue of Grenville will be also part of that study. So it's a sizable study that is going to commence. We have received some grant support, and government is also will be doing some portion of that cost as well for that 3 studies that is going to be taking place. So it is ongoing. And we look forward to the final report, and then we will implement those remedial measures to address the flooding in the area. We have received constant complaints from the business community in particular for the flooding at the area, and sometimes it is very scary. I myself had an opportunity, not a pleasant one, to drive through the area when it was actually flooded. I couldn't even see where the road was, where the drain was. It was a bit scary. So I do understand the challenges that constituents are having when we do have those heavy downpours. But study is on the way, and we are happy to resolve this as soon as possible. So thank you very much for raising that.
I'm sure the constituents and the business community would be very happy to hear you say that, sir. And speaking of constituents, and these are some issues that are affecting the constituency that you are vying to represent. The road conditions in Frequente and Long Circular Drive are really bad. Residents have been complaining about this issue for a long time. Will this be on your agenda to get done in the next year, maybe before the election?
Well, I am not one to wait on the election. As I said, I don't know how soon you have received a report, especially within the Frequente area, but significant work would have gone on from last year in the Frequente area. Number of roads, First Avenue all the way to the top of the hill, Second Avenue was paved. We paved a lot of other by roads. A lot of work is going on in Frequente in terms of roads. In terms of the Montu area, we're actually doing roads within the Montu area right now, drains. Throughout the Mount Hartman, who has not had a road in years, that road is just about being completed, has been delayed because of the demands for ready-mix concrete. Throughout the constituency, significant road work is taking place on Coffee Bowl Hill. You name it. We are doing significant road work, and we have a lot more to do. And those works are not driven by any election agenda. Those are works that are needed. Those are works that are long outstanding, and we give a commitment to have them done, and that is what we are doing.
And the timing is not coincidental at all.
Well, as I indicated, we started those work since 2020. In December of 2020, actually, we started those work. I myself went out, met with constituents on several occasions, and sometimes you hear the stories. Some person said, well, Senator Cox, other person would have came before and said the same thing and said, and we haven't seen the road. They didn't come back. But I can tell you it's a different story when it comes to what we have been able to at the Ministry of Infrastructure under my stewardship. We have been actually implementing those projects. And
You're
so
very
the
busy.
roads,
You're very busy man these days, Senator Cox, given your ministerial role. But let us go on quickly to the impact of the airport rehabilitation project and the impact it would have on the working people of the South St. George. How are people from that constituency benefiting directly from that project?
Well, this project is a significant project for Grenada in terms of positioning the airport going forward. In terms of, there are always changes in the civil aviation sector, and we have to be ready. We have to be prepared to ensure that we do that and we don't get downgraded and things like that. And then you hear, the cry foul on Grenada for not putting measures in place to ensure that we are ready. In terms of opportunities for persons, opportunities are way extended beyond just a constituency, but also opportunities throughout country for persons to work. Currently, we have work on the bypass road that has been subcontracted to a local contractor, Gilbert Engineering Construction Company. That's a company that is based in St. Patrick's. And so everybody has an opportunity to benefit through this project in terms of jobs. A number of persons would get employment in terms of drivers. They are also getting ready to start relaying the asphalt on the runway. And so local asphalt persons who work in that area, who have the capacity and knowledge of dealing with laying of asphalt, they have already reached out to the ministry to indicate that we're seeking the expertise of those persons to work with them to overlay the airstrip. So that is ongoing. They have sent out requests for a number of job opportunities for persons. Every 2 to 3 weeks, you'll see requests would come out as the project continues to ramp up. They are getting ready to set up the asset plant in a matter of weeks. It should be operational. If it's not an island as yet, I think it should be in an island this month, in the month of February. And once we get it up, we'll see more work taking place. I know that they were doing some testing the mixture, getting ready. So those things are taking place in the background. But it's a significant project for us, and we are happy that we are positioning MBIA for the future.
All right. Now, we would get to 3 final questions, and then we would also entertain some viewer comments, very interesting comments and questions coming in from our viewing audience. But are there plans for the Wall Street area? What do you envision and imagine that Wall Street area, which has now become known as a major recreation site in the south of the island? Are there any plans for that area?
Well, the vendors did approach my office sometime last year. There's an association raising some concerns, also outlaying some opportunities for them in terms of how they can improve that area. However, after deliberation at the cabinet level, it was decided that the tourism authority probably will be best positioned to work with them to help craft and to help improve that area, to see how we can look at the whole issue of traffic and the whole issue of vending, and also for the persons who have business in the area. So it's a kind of complex issue because there are a number of varying factors, and so those discussions are ongoing. But we are looking forward to have a resolution where we can see all parties coming away with something after those discussions are finalized. But yes, it's an area that we do have to spend some time on.
All right, now let us segue into national politics a little bit. Now, your political leader, Dr. Mitchell, has indicated, I believe this is about the 2nd or the 3rd time that he has indicated so. So I think the jury is still out on his decision whether or not this is going to be his last campaign. Either way, some have chided his legacy as one of hyper-partisanship, governing only for those who support him. In fact, some Grenadians claim to be afraid to speak out of fear of reprisals from your government on the direction of the Prime Minister. Do you believe that there is a culture of fear in the society? And if so, how would you change that perception?
I would start off by saying, that's a resounding no in terms of that analysis. And I can only speak of my own personal experience and in how where I am today. The Prime Minister He has a passion for people, and I speak that from my own personal experience in that when I was getting involved in this, he didn't know me personally. We didn't know each other, and he took a chance on me and gave me an opportunity to to serve in this capacity. And so I don't know about fear. I mean, Prime Minister has always been open. His leadership is super sterling. And even in this time of COVID, and I think in the absence of information and in the absence of knowing the individual, one may tend to say certain things. But in the business of politics, you have to be decisive at times and make certain harsh decisions because it has to do in terms of how you look at the country as a whole. And so sometimes those decisions may not be popular at the time, but in the interest of the country, you have to make them. And that is what some of the qualities that leadership call for. So sometimes there's a lot of debate around that, but he has always been, for me, in terms of his stewardship, have been outstanding. And I thank him for giving me that opportunity and for serving. We can take a lot of things for granted, and sometimes we overstep and miss some of the beautiful achievements where we are today, and that would have happened under his stewardship. We are all human beings. People make mistakes. Kellen, you and I, we make mistakes. We're not perfect, but that, in its sense, does not define who we are as a person. And so I think a lot of it is lost in a lot of political discourse. But he has been outstanding. In terms of his exit, he has always been signaling that he has to leave. He's getting ready to leave, and
except he is not. He has signaled so for a long time, and he's not.
Well, I think you have to understand that politics is about people, and if you serve people, and they ask for you to stay on to serve them some more, then it's a decision for that person to make. And you look, I mean, it's not anything, and there is no restriction. I mean, our process is one that has created opportunities for a number of young persons to prove themselves, and so that is what this process is about. But everything is defined by the people, and there is something that he always says to us as members of the cabinet, that the people is never wrong. So you have to follow those things. But as with everything else, I think that decision, rests with him. And from a principal standpoint, he has to make that decision, and he has signaled that more than likely this definitively will be his last. He has signaled that. I think in terms of his achievement and contribution to politics, I think he's comfortable. He's so he's in a wonderful space, and I think that has also benefits for a young person like me to understand the intricacies of being able to deal with politics at this level. And so I'm happy to have him around to be able to get an opportunity to benefit from that wisdom that he so displays on a daily basis. So I mean, I wish him all the best always. He continues to serve remarkably well, and I'm happy with that. Yeah.
So let us talk about the future leadership of your party when Dr. Mitchell eventually exits the political stage. What do you have a view on what the future leadership of your party should look like?
Well, I think any leadership that continues to put the people at the focus of what we do and the development of the country, especially young people, in terms of being able to look at what the future holds and to ensure that Grenada has a space in that future, I think would be welcome by Grenadians. Ordinary people, don't sometimes concern themselves with a lot of stuff that we believe that they do. There are some things that are passionate to them, their level, their livelihood, their well-being, and how you govern and how you represent the country. And so sometimes I think we overthink the process of what people think on a daily basis and how they view. People they have a clear understanding of what takes place, and they have a clear understanding of who and what they want. And so it's for me, I always say, just trust the people. That's what I do. Yeah.
Trust the people. Let us see how the people will vote in this next election. So, Senator Cox, thank you. Stand by for the questions before we allow you to go on with your day and to your church services and campaigning down in Wall Street.
I've already came from church. I was at church at 7 this morning. Yes.
All right. So let us get to some viewer comments here, if you will, and I want you to respond to some questions. Jose Ernesto is asking, good morning, Mr. Cox. In the latest election, you weren't chosen to be the caretaker for Caretaker and Petit Martinique, even though you were given more votes by the NNP kayaks than Kindra, but she was chosen by the Prime Minister to be the caretaker anyway. Why would you think you will be the best person for the South, given what happened in Carriacou last election? Now, I'm not able to confirm those allegations, but probably you can clear that up for me from the viewer here with respect to what happened in the last caretaker candidacy process in Carriacou. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Yes, so thank you very much for that question. Yes, we did have a process, a democratic process, open process, in terms of selecting the caretaker for Carriacou. And eventually Kindra emerged, and for a number of reasons. And I say this, Dr. Bubb, that when you're in an organization, sometimes the best person to do something depends on everything. You take everything into consideration, and you look at the organization as a whole. And the decision to move forward with Kindra was not a decision of from me or selfishness or for anybody else, but it was a decision of the party at the time. It was the best decision, and I supported it wholly. I supported Kindra throughout, and that process has landed me an opportunity to be in Grenada. So sometimes what one may perceive as a disappointment in itself presents an opportunity otherwise, and that is how one of the things that and that is how I live, and that is how I accept life and how it goes at time. And so as regards to the South, the same passion, the same commitment that I've brought to everything that I do, all the work that I've done to and for Carriacou and still continue to do, is the same that I bring. And I have this little challenge that I meet some constituents when they ask, well, Senator Cox, we never met you and we don't know you that well. And I said, look, you have a telephone directory, just pull any number that from any residence in Carriacou, any home, and you call and you can ask about me. Yeah, and that is how I feel. That is how I feel about Carriacou and Carriacouans, and I feel comfortable in that space. And I believe that there's an excellent opportunity to offer that to the residents of South St. George constituency. They would not be disappointed, I can assure you, if once they give me the opportunity.
Okay, but Senator Cox, I'm going to press you here on that question. Was there a democratic process in the NNP Carriacou constituency that said that they wanted you to be the caretaker for that constituency, but that process was overruled? I'm just trying to understand what that process played out like.
Well, the process had to do with, well, of course, there are going to be scientific, unscientific polling. There are going to be feedback from the people. And myself, Senator Steele, Minister Stewart, we were all vying to be the caretaker. And in those assessments, yes, and the Prime Minister did also openly indicated to the National Executive that when we would have done all this assessment, Cox would have emerged. But there are a number of intricacies in terms of moving forward with the party, the work of the party, and governance, of course. And it would be prudent for us to make a decision as to how we're going to do this. And I don't want to go into the details. And one may think that it is something bad, but it wasn't anything. It was more about the functioning of governance, and also for the party, and a number of intricacies, and which we had a lengthy discussion on. And I understand, and you see that is what leadership and maturity is about, in terms of being able to function as a party. That sometimes you have varying views, varying desires, but once you think about the institution as a whole, you have to make those decisions, and maybe that's the reason why we don't find ourselves having the kind of rumblings as other organizations may have suffered. Yes.
Well, perhaps. Well, I mean, well, one can say that probably you keep your rumblings on the wraps, right?
Well,
you're probably very good
it's
at
not
doing
about
that.
It's not about keeping on the wraps. Of course, you are going to have differences in opinions and approach. That is understandable and that's common. But at the end of the day, you come up with a consensus decision in terms of ensuring that whatever decision you take is done in the interest of the institution and the organization, and that is how you serve. So it is not different from anything else. It's not difficult. I have no regrets. I'm truly happy. My family is happy. We are comfortable. I'm a member of the cabinet, and I still serve people. So
all's well that ends well, I suppose. All right, let's quickly get to, because we have to get to the next segment. When I listen to the gentleman, I immediately think of those lights for the stadium. Have they been procured yet? I don't know what. Perhaps you want to take a stab at that, Senator Cox?
Sure. Yes. So we have been embarking to light the National Stadium for some time, and what would have happened just as we were about to, we had a contract already prepared to roll out that project, and as we were about to roll out, COVID came. We had to make a conscious decision whether or not to go forward with such a project at this point in time, in terms of the cost, the intensive cost for it, as against investing in health. And so a decision was made to hold back the project. Recently, the Prime Minister has signaled that we should start looking at it again, now that we seem to be coming out of that crisis. Similarly, we just kind of keep our fingers crossed. As you notice, just last year, we signed a contract for Lasajes, and Lasajes is already been implemented. Should be completed within a couple of weeks or so. Lasajes will be completed. So we want to start moving on the stadium soon. So that was one of the main reasons why we didn't move forward with the project. But we have already done all the legwork, everything. As I indicated, our contract was already prepared. A preferred contract was also selected. So, and we have to look at that process again. But that is not. It's a program. It's a project that I would really love. I would really love to be the one overseeing that project to like that. It's going to be a fantastic opportunity to see that project through. Yeah.
All right. And then we have another one. If you're elected as a representative for the South St. George, what are you willing to do about the quarry dust? No sprinklers to prevent the heavy dust to the residents and the working on Sundays.
Okay, but I that issue really has not met me as at the fore as a critical issue, and I thank that resident for raising that. I know that there's some discussions surrounding the quarry and the duration of its operations. I don't have the details at hand, but in the immediate, we can look to speak to the operators of the quarry to see how we can resolve this issue. Yeah, I'm happy that you raised that, and I'll take that into consideration immediately.
All right, we're going to entertain two or three questions here. As the former Minister of Culture, can Minister Cox give an update on the status of the National Museum?
Okay, wonderful. The museum, we had some extensive work in terms of moving the whole structure and the management. You know that we had a new act for the museum as well, and so we are happy to have that structure up. What I do know is that there is significant assessment is being done by ourselves through infrastructure to have the museum restored. Some restoration work has started. I know on the balcony there's a critical issue with the electricals. That is being assessed right now to be remedied. The whole place has to be rewired. I believe it's a hazard. So work is ongoing in that regard. There's much more work to be done in terms of getting the museum back where it used to be as we open up for tourists and things like that. So that is where we are. But restoration work is ongoing on the museum. It's one of our gem, one of our assets, and it's a priority for government.
And speaking of the museum, Senator Cox, one of the issues that I've been championing here on the report is the public library. It is in a state of disrepair. We have valuable archives in that building that continue to be infested by mold, historic valuable archives. And that building is an eyesore. And it is very concerning to me that we do not have a public library in our showpiece in the town of St. George. Are there plans to really treat to that building and to the valuable resources we have in that building?
Thank you for raising that, Dr. Bob. That structure really needs attention immediately. We have been having some discussions with the parliamentary rep. He have been trying to make his own engagement to get support. I think a preliminary assessment was done to restore it. We do not want to change the infrastructure, the look of the building, the library, and to get it back operational. What I can tell you is that that building, including the York House, is part of the World Bank next phase of support for Grenada. So that is being finalized right now, and so I'm happy to indicate that the library and York House is on for consideration for funding through the World Bank project. So we're doing a necessary assessment now, but it is going to be covered under that support program. In terms of the operation and the infrastructure part, the parliamentary rep and the historical society, they are going to be dealing with that. In terms of the infrastructure, we will treat with that specifically.
Well, that's not on the election agenda, is it? I'm saying this in jest, Senator Cox.
Well, as I said, I don't really think in election. I think in terms of a logical approach to development, there are some things that we must do despite an election or not. And so it's within that context that I'm speaking. I don't think the whole issue of the library is one. It doesn't matter who is governing. That is a national issue, and it doesn't have anything to do with any political party or so. It's something that we have to do for young people to have that space to ensure that we sustain those records, those history. And so it is more from a nationalistic standpoint than so more from a political standpoint that I speak on that issue.
Okay, Senator Cox, we quickly have to get to the next segment. Viewers and listeners, we had other questions, but I do apologize if I was not able to entertain all of them. But I'm sure you can visit the constituency office of Senator Cox. I believe he says he has an open door policy. So you can go there with your questions, so whether you're NNP or NDC in your yellow. So Mr. Cox, I will give you an opportunity for some closing comments before we get to the next panel, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bob, for having me. I just want to reaffirm my commitment to the constituents of South St. George constituency, that I will do my best to ensure that we work together to resolve some of the nagging issues. Kevin, one of the things that is foremost on my agenda is the restoration of our communities that have been impacted by COVID. A number of lives have been lost, regrettably. A number of jobs have been lost. And I think that is where we have to start. We see a lot of community centers have closed. We have a number of sporting events have been put on hold. So we need to get our communities back being where they were and being what they're supposed to do in terms of embracing each other. I think I'm excited to get our work back up and going. That's where we're going to start. Everything is going to evolve from there. Once you have your community up and going, once you have them a lot, and once you have them buying in to what it is that we can cultivate for a future for the young persons and the constituency, we are going to be successful in what we have to do. And so that is where our focus is, and that is where we believe that we have to start. We have to start with our communities. So I'm happy to be here. I would have loved to answer more of those questions. It gives an opportunity to inform the public on what is taking place, what I have to offer, what is taking place with government. So maybe there might be an opportunity for me to come back at some future time So let's see how that goes.
There will be an opportunity for you to come back. Unlike the political leader of your party, who ignores the Bubb Report, and that's all right. I must give credit. I must give credit to you, and I must give people credit to you and Peter David and Dr. Clarice Modest-Kerwin, Oliver Joseph, who have been very open that they're not afraid of tough questions. So I thank you for appearing on the report, and there would be other opportunities for you to come back, as there's a lot that we didn't get covered. For example, the Western Main Road project over there in Marlborough.
Yeah. I can speak quickly if I could speak quickly on that, because I think it's very important. Yes, that project is moving. We currently the landslip area is being tendered currently. We should have the tenders back early March and for evaluation, so we can soon see construction work. Hopefully, by the end of March, early April, a contractor should be awarded works to be implemented. So we have a lot to talk about. So that's just a quick update. We are moving forward with that project. We are very excited to. A number of the communities they have lost a lot of livelihoods with that road not being operational, and then you have the increasing traffic in the Mount Morris area that has impacted the communities negatively. A lot of disturbance, a lot of issues, a lot of accidents. The road is not conducive. We're also doing a new road in Mount Kuma to accommodate for the trucks going to the north. A lot of business have been affected. So we are working, and I just wanted to say that under the stewardship of the Prime Minister, I think we have a good opportunity to continue to restore the Western Corridor and of course bring back the livelihoods for persons in those areas. So Ken, I just want to close further by saying I just want to congratulate you on your own personal achievements, and of course your show, the Bubb Report, and I wish you all the best. As you see, just to contend with what you indicated earlier, members of the cabinet have leverage to speak on and program to speak on issues, and so as I indicated, that is how we operate. We believe that there's an opportunity, there's a space for the public to get an opportunity to hear what is taking place in government and to hear what is taking place with MPs and prospective MPs like myself. So we are happy, and I'm happy to be here. I wish you all the best today. And for the Ireland cabin meal, anyway, I know on wood fire is different than from a stove. So I empathize with you, but you can't just think about it as if you're home in Grenada. That's all I can say.
All right. Rub it in, Senator, rub it in. But as an honorary CAC myself, I wish you all the very best in your endeavors. And we look forward to following your progress in your new field of endeavor. Senator Cox, thank you for appearing on the Bubb Report.
You're welcome. All right, bye.
Absolutely. Viewers and listeners, that was Senator Nolan Cox, the newly minted caretaker candidate of the New National Party in the South St. George constituency. As a programming update, we will be having the caretaker candidate of the New National Party of the St. Patrick West constituency in our next installment of the Bubb Report next week. Of course, this is part of the conversations with caretaker candidates with both main parties. Of course, the GULP here, so we'll be asking them about their caretaker candidates as well, and when that will be rolled out. But whenever the NDC decides to roll out their caretaker candidates, they would also have an invitation to appear on the Bubb Report. So viewers and listeners, please stand by. We will be back for the second segment of the day.
This is the Bubb Report with Dr. Kellon Bubb.
Willingly or not, Grenada does seem to be marching towards independence. If all goes according to plan on Thursday, this tiny island of spices will join Bermuda, Barbados, and Trinidad in autonomy from Britain. And yet, there isn't much spontaneous joy or celebration. For one thing, much of the business section in the capital city is in shambles following last week's riots. The country is still in the grips of a general strike. There is no electricity, no telephones, virtually no contact with the outside. Food and gasoline are scarce. At roadside congregations, prayers are offered up daily for the country. At the same time, many of Grenada's 110,000 citizens welcome a Sunday parade to give them something else to think about. But through it all, Grenada's Prime Minister, Eric Gary, has shown little sign of concern. Calls for his resignation from opposition parties fall on deaf ears. Outwardly charming, he appears unflappable, serene in the knowledge of his own almost dictatorial power, and waves aside the possibility that he and his government could be overthrown in the next few days.
By God, no, we are an entrenched government. We've been here for a long time.
And welcome back, viewers and listeners. That was a retrospective news report from the Associated Press reporting on the build-up to Grenadian independence, Grenadian political independence back in February of 1974. Of course, the road to Grenada's independence was not paved in all pleasantries and gold. It was a very turbulent period in Grenadian history. And so we want to get into it. We want to bring in Mr. Jeffrey Prudhomme, who is the current political leader of the Grenada United Labour Party and the son of Grenada's former Prime Minister. That is Mr. Herbert Prudhomme, who served as Gary's deputy for many years. In fact, Mr. Prudhomme was at the helm, acting as Prime Minister in his role as Prime Minister during the overthrow of the Grenada United Labour Party government on the morning of March 13th, 1979. And we also have Mr. Ewart Lane, who is a former member of the New Jewel movement, very actively involved in political activism at the time that Grenada attained political independence from Great Britain. Gentlemen, welcome to the Bubb Report.
Thank you, Dr. Bubb, for having me.
Absolutely. And Mr. Lane, it would be remiss of me if I did not extend a happy 75th anniversary to you as a fellow presentation college student.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and the same to you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Many PBC students, past students out there, and even to the current students. Yeah.
Yes. Now, Mr. Lane and Mr. Prudhomme, and that's Mr. Prudhomme, we're hoping that he can solve some of his technical issues there. But Mr. Lane, where were you on the night that Grenada got independence? I'm sure you were pretty young at the time. Perhaps you were still a student in high school. But do you remember that moment that Grenada attained independence from Great Britain?
Can't remember exactly where I was, but I'm certain I would have been at home, at my parents' home. I was 15 years old at the time, a student at Presentation College. The crisis was on. I had to do exams that year, I remember. But basically, we didn't have any school that year. I spent a lot of the time reading some books and also playing table tennis and maybe getting grounded in revolutionary thinking and so. So that's what I recall of the period. I think there was a general strike at the time, so there was no electricity. You had issues with water. The port was on strike. The port was lockdown. So it was a difficult time. I think Mr. Brizan, one of my past teachers and also a past student at PBC, coined and or promoted the phrase island of conflict.
Yes.
And I think we were born independent, so it was born in conflict.
Okay.
Grenada.
Absolutely. And Mr. Prudhomme, the same question. I don't know if you heard the question because while you're attempting to situate your connection there, where were you on the night that Grenada attained independence, that symbolic transition when the Union Jack was lowered and the Grenada flag was lifted? I know that you're the son of the former Deputy Prime Minister of Grenada. I'm sure you were probably very young then, but do you remember that moment, sir? Mr. Pradam, all right, Mr. Pradam is having some serious technical issues there. But what we want to do, Mr. Lane, is to talk about that road to independence, which doesn't start in 1973. Now, Sir Eric Gairy, on his return to Grenada from Aruba, where ironically he was deported for attempting to organize workers into a union, was able to upset the status quo in 1951 by way of the Sky Red Revolt. Do you believe that 1951 was a precursor to independence 23 years later?
Well, absolutely. 1951 is a very important period in Grenada's history. No one can really seriously deny that. But the truth is, Kellon, you have to see a longer process, and Grenada was part of that process in the Caribbean. At one time, the Grenada and the Caribbean, Jamaica, Haiti, they were crowns. They were jewels in the colonial crown. But what happened with the abolition of slavery in 1838, and gradually these islands becoming less and less important, and the socioeconomic conditions of the people not improving after the abolition of slavery, the ground was, in a sense, laid for that. And you can really go back to the 1930s, 1934 onwards, when a series of, well, in fact, even before then, but you can take 1934 as a starting point, when there was great unrest, basically broke out in the Caribbean, Jamaica, Trinidad, even Barbados, which then led to the British sending Lloyd Moyne, and there was the proceedings of the Moyne Commission that sat from 1938. And essentially, coming out of that commission was a decision by Britain that they would slack off these islands. If you read the literature from the time, even from the words of Lloyd Moyne, they spoke of basically the Caribbean region being a drain on the British purse, and it was even more so it was brought into sharper focus by the challenge of the World War. So what happened is that from the 1940s, Britain basically took the decision to slack off these territories. They'll grant adult suffrage, and then it was a progression. So by the time you had adult suffrage in Jamaica in 1944, Trinidad 1946, and what would have happened is that the upheavals in Grenada in 1951, which were led by Eric Gairy, really created the conditions for the implementation of decisions that were already taken. So as to basically continue that process of slacking off these islands. And one could say that process culminated in 1974 with independence.
Mm-hmm. What role did associated statehood play in that process? Because I know that Grenada became an associated state. A fun fact, there was an associated state flag for Grenada, which I will be sharing shortly. But what role did associated statehood play in accelerating that move towards independence?
Right. So associated statehood was implemented in 1967 pursuant to the West Indies Act. And essentially what associated statehood led to was internal self-government, as it was said. But Britain remained responsible for defense and external affairs. But internal self-government was established through the West Indies Act. However, it is also important to know, and that's why I said you can see it as a process, even before, or in fact, as part of, simultaneous with the West Indies Act, the code system that we now enjoy with all the other islands of the Eastern Caribbean was established. Basically, that was a process that was driven by United Kingdom. In 1965 or 66, ECA, Eastern Caribbean Currency Authority, was also established. Again, it was something driven by the British. by the British government. So all of this was really preparing the groundwork so as to, as smooth as possible, release these islands. So associated statehood was really that part where we are allowed to have internal self-government and to govern the internal affairs of the country. But we did not have independence, we did not have control of foreign affairs, and we did not have control over issues of defense.
All right, Mr. Prudhomme, let me bring you back here, sir. Mr. Prudhomme, where are you?
Yes, sir.
Attention, there you are. I think we can.
I'm right here.
There you are, and I think it would be important for us to acknowledge the role of Sir Eric Matthew Gary in charting Grenada's course to national political independence. So I think today has to be a special day for you and for your political organization, given his historic role in Grenadian politics. Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on. Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
Please
yes,
go
well,
ahead.
thank you for being on your platform today. And yes, for the Grenada United Labour Party, it is quite an honor and privilege to be here on the forum on this significant occasion on coming up Monday on the 40th anniversary of Grenada's independence. And if we go back to 1951 and to see the significant role, Gary and the Gary movement was Grenada's first revolution and first successful revolution working within the constitutional frameworks that existed from Colony, from the Colony Act from 1950 all the way forward. And it was always the goal of the GLP under Sir Eric to be leading on that road to independence, because it was fundamental to the liberation of the working people of Grenada. And what was significant about the labor movement, most of the parties during that period came out of the labor movement, but Grenada's own was more significant in that it happened simultaneously with the birth of the labor movement, the rural labor movement, and the forming of the Grenada United Labour Party to secure and to continue advocate for the rights of our working people. So when you look at the evolution all the way as to statehood, where Grenada, as was mentioned, controlled the internal affairs, but for foreign and defense was under the British all the way up to statehood. And in the GLP platform of 1972, that is when the Grenada United Labour Party put forward on their platform that Grenada would move forward with independence. But it was always along those lines in terms of the visionary leadership of Sir Eric and the historic nature of the rural agricultural labor movement, which had eclipsed the middle class and the labor unions from the capital. And that's what was significant in the marriage of the activities and working mainly for increase in wages, but ultimately it led to social and political objectives.
Okay, so Mr. Prudhomme, I'm going to segue into another aspect of this conversation, because one of the prerequisites for independence was, at least according to the British, was that Grenada place independence on the ballot for an election. In that 1972 election, in fact, Sir Eric Gairy went on to win a significant mandate. Now, granted, that election was also marred with allegations of vote rigging by Sir Eric Gairy, but that mandate was had, and it was also that time that Grenada went from having 10 seats in the parliament to 15 seats in the parliament. So that was an interesting piece of history that I didn't know. But let us talk about Sir Eric Gairy's insistence that Grenada accomplish independence. Why was it important for him and for the GULP for Grenada to accomplish independence? And in retrospect, was that a right decision, looking back 42 years later?
Looking back, it was a significant decision and position of Sir Eric and the Grenada United Labour Party. And here's the reason why. Under the colonial process, up to statehood, we were only responsible for internal affairs. So in order, because of the lack of funding for development, if Grenada had to get loans or to negotiate anything, it had to be a tripartite arrangement because the British had to be involved because they were responsible for foreign affairs. So why does any country want independence? It wants independence so that it can have bilateral relations. It could negotiate loans, it could relations with other countries, trade, etc. Grenada was not responsible for those things, and that's why independence was significant. For instance, a good example would be SGU. SGU came on after independence, and all it took was an act of parliament to establish the university. If we were under statehood, we would have to bring the British in and would have to be a tripartite arrangement or negotiation. And that's the difference. And the fact of the matter, I use SGU as a GLP initiative, and now it represents, with the evolution of the university, 25% of the GDP. But that was visionary leadership. And that is the kind of things that are required, but particularly for joining international organizations, you have to be independent. For having foreign relations with other government, you can do those directly. For trade, you can have your own trade arrangements. And of course, for loan and aid and all those things. So it was the next step in the whole constitutional evolutionary process. And particularly, Sir Eric was very frustrated with the colonial powers, because even from 1951 on, he was always challenged for various reasons. And, you know, he lost his franchise for a meeting, for squandermania.
Well, for a meeting,
really
but
was,
Mr. Prudhomme,
was the center of that allegation
Mr. Prudhomme, you keep talking, but Mr. Gairy was suspended for disrupting a political meeting in Belmont in which he weaponized steel pans, and there was also the commission report that spoke to multiple allegations of corruption against him. So the idea that he lost his franchise writ large because he was only challenging the British status quo, that was not the only reason. There were other allegations as well. Go ahead.
No, I agree. There were other allegations, but they were not consequential. They were not consequential. It was another way of frustrating the political direction and aspiration of his leadership and the party's role in the progress and national development of Grenada. And so when he came back and he voted again, it was overwhelming in terms of the election victories, even up to 76 when he had the People's Alliance, and it was a 9-6 And it was a hard-fought election, but he was still victorious.
All right, let me bring in Mr. Lane here. Mr. Lane, and we're speaking here of that
Hi, Edward.
crucial.
Edward.
Ewart, it's Ewart, not Edward.
Hi, Jeffrey.
that 72 elections, was it? It was 72, leading
Yes,
up to the 76. The 73, 74 Marlborough House negotiations there. A lot of opponents of GULP were not opposed to the idea of independence, but they were opposed to the idea of independence under an Eric Gary dispensation. So can you articulate why there was that fear of independence under Sir Eric Gary?
Well, Kellogg, in all honesty, I think it is a bit more complicated than that.
Okay.
I mean, that's what you'd have been hearing at the time, and even now it is presented in that way sometimes, right? But there was a section of what Gary would have called the old ruling class, so Eric would have called the old ruling class, that was opposed to independence. At the very minimum, they were very wary about it. And that was not unique to Grenada. It happened in Jamaica, it happened in the other islands. So that was not unique to Grenada. On the other hand, what you had also was a section of the population, in particular the youth population, who, and in the earlier segment, they had Sir Eric referring to people who came back from universities and so.
Hot and sweaty.
That's what we referred to them, But but certainly with progressive ideas, having seen the world, having seen what was possible, right? And they were of the belief that, listen, we can do much better than just, as it was said at the time, getting flag independence. Mm-hmm. However, there was a certain amount of vagueness, and on reflection, because I was around 15 years old, between 14 and 16 at the time, and I could even remember some of the debates. And I remember being personally confused as to why some people will be opposing independence. But I think what was happening is that the issue of, and I'm speaking about people who were young and even progressive, and you were led to believe that they were opposing the independence. But I think, as you correctly said, what was happening is that some people we are conflating, we are taking as one opposition to Gary and to an opposition to independence. So I think that is what really happened. So there was widespread protests by the people who were progressive. There was widespread protests by the trade unions and so. And it came across, it was being sold as being opposed to independence. But I don't believe that the young, what I'll call the young progressive section of the population was ever really opposed to independence. Yes, you had some of what Sir Eric would have called the old ruling class, and they had their own grouses and grievances with him. And they carried that forward. So I think you had that situation. But I just want to point out that 1972, between 1972 and January 1974, the situation in the country had changed greatly. So you'd have had many people who would have supported Sir Eric in 1972 elections, and by 1974 they were opposed to him for various reasons, right? And so you have, it wasn't a straightforward process, and the answers are not as easy as they are sometimes presented.
Okay, so let us talk about Bernard Cord's appearance at the Marlborough House Conference. Can you talk about what that meeting was about? We were trying to get Mr. Cord to appear on the program, but he had some health challenges. So can you talk about the purpose of that conference as you remember it?
Well, that's an interesting one because I know there were many people who were surprised. I remember even some jurists in the Caribbean being surprised that Bernard was actually a participant in that Marlborough Conference. The Marlborough Conference was to finalize the constitution that Independence Constitution. And in that context, it is important to know that under the West Indies Act, Section 10 of the West Indies Act, there were two routes to independence. The first route was by Act of the Parliament of Grenada, which would then have to be approved by the people in referendum with a 2/3 majority of those voted. We had two recent experiences of referenda in Grenada, so I think most people should probably understand what that process is about and what was required. So that was one route. The second route was by the British government through what was referred to as council in order. Order in council, sorry. Essentially say, listen, I slacken you off. Take your steel beam and go if you want to use the language from a popular song. And in that way now, the people of the country were not involved. I know you said earlier that the British insisted that the issue of independence should be put on the ballot. Well, I think you probably meant at least as a campaign issue, not specifically as an issue like people vote on it. It meant as a campaign issue, and then the ruling party, which then won, could say, listen, we put that to the people, and this was our manifesto, and we got their approval of the people. But again, these two routes that I mentioned really demonstrates the point I was making earlier, that the British, for a long time, several decades ago, took the decision that, listen, they want to slack off these territories, and in the West Indies Act, they left a route to be able to do that. So it was very easy for them to slack us off. But notice, if we wanted to go by our own motion, then they demanded that we have to go to referendum, and we had to get 2/3 support. So it's interesting to know, it's important to know, because I know that has been an issue discussed many times in Grenada, that the constitution we have was essentially a constitution handed down to us by the British government. That is not to say that there are not features of it which were really a consequence of the internal process in Grenada. So my understanding is that Bernard was actually chosen as a member of the opposition delegation by the opposition leader, H.A. Blaze. So he actually appeared at the conference as a member of the opposition delegation, even though it was known at the time that he was associated with NGM. He was one of the NGM, if you want to put it, the NGM boys, as they would have called them at the time. So that's how Bernard appeared. And the story that I have heard is that alarm bells went off when the British government sent the proposed constitution for examination by the then government in Grenada. And alarm bells went off from right inside of Sir Eric's cabinet at the time, because there were people who say, listen, we not against independence, we all for the independence, but this constitution that we are seeing, this document could be trouble. There are not sufficient checks and balances in the document, and that's a problem. That's problematic. So that would have really have aroused the fears of those who felt already that, listen, Gary will become a dictator, he'll become a papa dog, he'll become this, he'll become that, he'll become the other. That really arose those fears. So if you now look at the Grenada Constitution, but first of all of the provisions in the Constitution are entrenched provisions. You need either a special majority, or in many cases, you need to have a referendum, and not just a referendum, you must get 2/3 majority support in the referendum to be able to change many of the clauses of the Constitution. At least that's the conventional thinking. Right? Now, my understanding is that balance, that check was put in there into the Constitution really to satisfy the concerns of the opposition. That's why if you look at the constitutions that went before us, Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados, you will not see the word referendum used there at all. But it was used in the Grenada Constitution. So that's my understanding of that background.
Let me bring back Mr. Prudhomme here. Mr. Prudhomme, I'm bringing you back here. Before we close, we have to get to some closing comments from both of you. But what is the status of the GULP in its preparation for the upcoming general election? Both the NNP and the NDC are in the process of rolling out the various caretaker candidates. When would we see GULP caretaker candidates being rolled out?
Well, we are in the process. We're in the process of still unfolding our caretakers. Again, the GULP is building back in a non-traditional way. We're more or less like going full circle. So it started as a movement and became a party, and now we're back in the movement phase. And so the party is being rebuilt in a non-traditional way until we have the various infrastructure and muscle of the party that we can roll out in a similar fashion. But that process is ongoing and it's in the works. That much I can tell you.
Define non-traditional. How you say it's been rebuilt in a non-traditional way? Mr. Prudhomme, can you hear me, sir? When you say non-traditional, are you able to hear me, sir? Okay, I don't think Mr. Prudhomme is hearing us at all. Okay, Mr. Lane, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Okay, Mr. Prudhomme, did you hear my question?
Yeah, you're coming in. You know what I'm saying? Yes, in a non-traditional way, in how we're building back and selecting. Pardon me?
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, what I mean by the non-traditional way is that we are identifying our caretakers, and we're building out from that point of view, from that aspect of strengthening the party.
Okay, so what I would do at this point is to offer you some opportunities for some closing comments, sir, as we commemorate 48 years of independence. What do you envision another 48 years of Grenadian independence looking like? I think there is a delay.
Well, from a GLP perspective, our mission, the GLP mission, is the total transformation and development of Grenada. And the next 48 years would see we're more or less in the third wave of leadership in terms of the confluence of all the various issues, international issues, in particular climate change and the pandemic. But Grenada has a good foundation. We have a fairly good educational system. We need to improve on our medical care and our number one national goal of the Grenada United Labour Party is healthcare, both affordable and accessible healthcare. So the next 48 years, the underlying emphasis of the total transformation and development of Grenada is to see the building out of all the various economic sectors to include the digital economy that would impact the development of Grenada, both particularly for young people. If you go back and you look at what the GLP was, it was the GLP that reduced the voting age to 18. It was a GLP. If you look from that period, from the GLP to now, we have only built 3 new schools. The junior high school program, in terms of the GLP built 28 schools in a rapid order. So the foundation of the educational system is still inherently from the Grenada United Labour Party. The Happy Hill School was built, and I think the Wester Hall Secondary School was added since, and I think there was a third. But in terms of the real educational infrastructure of Grenada, it's what was built on. So every successive government comes with the continuity of operation. A lot of the things, the airport as an example, the foundation for the airport and the plans were already in place. It was easy for the NGM and Maurice Bishop to be able 6 months afterwards to get the airport project done, because the feasibility studies were already done by the Canadians. You talk about the Providence Fund. That was an initiative by the ILO, and it was prescriptive. But really, what they did was that they were able to convert the Providence Fund, and they were close to $1 million in the transformation and the progression of the NIS. So when you look at all the visionary fundamental leadership things that the GLP laid out, and that the new dual movement was able to come in and build on, a lot of the stuff was shovel ready, and they were able to expand on the secondary school program, the school bus that was specified for kids, etc. So you had all those things. We hope that the pension and gratuity issue would be resolved. It is constitutionally mandated. Grenada's constitution was one of the most progressive in terms of the rights. Workers' rights were embedded in there, and equal pay in terms of equality of pay, regardless of male or female. All those things. So it was a very forward-looking, progressive constitution. And so for the next 48 years, is that what we can envision is the further transformation and development of Grenada, building out all our economic sectors, providing opportunities for all our young people, particularly when you build a comprehensive economic plan that builds out all the sectors, and you tie your development plan to that in terms of curriculum and training and creating a pipeline for entry level. It gives our young people with greater affinity and curiosity to find a niche within the economic sector and tie our development plan to the needs of the country. And so that is what I envision, where all our people, in terms of the continuation, as originally started with the liberation of the workers in Grenada, because in 1950 was serfdom, and fighting against the plantocracy and the urban middle class was the work of the GLP to help liberate the agricultural workers. And so going forward is the hope that we would see the building out of the rural economy and building an economy that works for everybody, where everybody can feel satisfied, where there's not just guarantee of work, but sustainable work that impacts the social economic development of the country. So
All right,
that is what I envision. That is what we see for the future.
Okay. All right, Mr. Pridham, thank you so much. And Mr. Lane, I'll give you the opportunity for some closing comments on this occasion of independence.
Yes. There can be no doubt that 1974, the attainment of independence, is a significant achievement and a significant date in our history. And no one can take away the fact that that attainment and that achievement is associated with the GLP and the name of Sir Gary. Likewise, I don't think anyone can seriously doubt that 1951 and the struggles of 1951 was really a watershed moment in the history of our country, and a very important moment in the history of our country. In fact, even those of us who, as revolutionaries, we used to speak of the 1951 revolution. That's the way we viewed it. We speak about the 1795 Federal Rebellion, the 1951 revolution, and then we speak about the of course the 1979 revolution. So I don't think that anyone can take away the significance of independence, the significance of the role of Sir Gary, the significance of the role of GLP. But if you ask me personally, I think like with the GLP and now the NGM, these are really issues of the history of our country. These are really elements of the history of our country for historians and young people, and so to address and to put in the appropriate perspective. In competitive politics, you will always have issues. There will always be people who oppose. There will always be people who glorify things that you do, and there will always be people who condemn the very same thing. So it is always best to have a distant eye in order to make an assessment. But in terms of the significance of the role of the GLP and of Sir Eric to the history of the country, I don't think it could be seriously doubted. I don't doubt it, even as one who was a revolutionary and participated in the demise of the Gay regime. That's my perspective. In fact, I have said, and many people share the view, that in many respects, we who were the revolutionaries in the 70s, in many respects, were like the grandchildren of the 1951 movement. Because Jeffrey might not know that I had a granduncle who was a minister in the Gary government, and he was a minister up to 1979 when we made I think he was a minister still when we made the revolution. So I see all this as part of the progression of the history of the country. And as the Flying Turkey says in the song, we have come a long way, we still have a long way to go. We learn along the process, and we identify the mistakes, but the positives we take them and we bring them forward. And
Absolutely.
we try to go forward as a united people. That's how I see it.
Absolutely. Mr. Lane, thank you so much. Of course, in this 75th year of Presentation College, one of the things that we need to do is to lay bare the history of PBC in that resistance movement of the revolution. But that would call for another program, perhaps on a PBC platform at some point in this year.
Okay, and
Yes.
I was thinking earlier that the person you identified as not wanting to appear on your program, you can reach out, try to use the PBC links.
Yeah, well, that's right. I might have to do that.
Okay.
All right.
And I just want to congratulate you, like the senator did. I want to congratulate you on your personal achievement. I think it's very inspirational. Your story is inspirational. And
thank you.
That's what our country is about, And I think we all played a role. Some of us different ways, But we all Grenadians at the end of the day.
Absolutely. On that note, Mr. Lane, thank you so much, and happy independence to you and your family. Please say hi to Auntie Karen for me.
I'm sure she's listening. Thank you very much.
That out there. All right. You have a good day. And viewers and listeners, thank you so much for your participation on the Bubb Report today. On behalf of the production team who helped put this program together, we thank you for your continued viewership and listenership. Remember, we will start streaming on the CRFM platform in Grenada. That's CRFM Radio in Grenada from next week Wednesday from this Wednesday actually at 5 p.m. We're also on GBN television at 5 p.m. on Wednesdays. And so if you did not have an opportunity to catch the program on social media, you are able to see it on television and listen to it on radio in Grenada. Thank you again. Happy Independence, Grenada, and have a safe and pleasant week. Bye-bye.